Teachers have read it. When did you realize a kid was gifted? Ain't a teacher, and it's my little brother, but I thought I'd share it. When I was around 14 and he was around 6 years old, I would watch lots of YouTube videos in English, ain't our native language, and he would just sit on the bed behind me and watch for hours. I thought he was just bored and didn't understand anything from what was being said. Fast forward a year, and we were on a long car ride, and he picked up a history book in English. After a couple hours, he tells us he has done reading it. Dad laughs and says, "Oh, sure." I ask him to read a sentence, and he translates it. He proceeds to absolutely nail it and shock us. This kid was always bright, but never really inspired by much of what he did. Seemed a little lazy, but wasn't troublesome. He was just kind of a neutral kid in the class. That we did one day of Lewis structures, and he thought it was too easy. Give him a harder worksheet, which he finished in like 3 seconds. So I gave him an organic formula that had 12 different isomers and some resonance structures. He came up with all of them in less than 15 minutes, including ones that had to do with how the object would look in 3D, even though we never covered it. Kid is currently working on his PhD of Yale in organic chemistry. Biology teacher here. Had a new student come in at age 15. He didn't talk much, but he did all his work as asked and did it well. One day we were having a discussion about something and he joined in. It ended up being a back and forth between just the two of us, and at some point I realized I was discussing pretty high-level stuff with a 15-year-old. He's a neurosurgeon now. There was this kid in my HS chemistry class who would sit in the back, never really talk to anybody, and finish all tests and assignments in less than half the time. Chill guy, just kept to himself. One day we had a test on stoichiometry, which, if I remember correctly, involves a lot of conversions across different units with multiplication and division of factors out of the hundredths place. You get a lot of long numbers, really need a calculator to keep it all straight. Anyway, the test goes on and it reaches the time he normally finishes, but this time he doesn't. I think, oh crap, this test must be a killer if this kid hasn't finished yet. Everyone else must be fricked. Time gets to about 15 minutes left. We're all panicking. Then finally the kid gets up and turns it in. Still the first in the class, mind you, but by a much smaller margin than normal. A week goes by and we get the tests back. Big shockwave in the class because this kid gets a 0. Teacher thinks he has been cheating because all of his answers were basically close but off by enough that it is not a rounding error. They think he must have an answer key that he copied. Need to investigate further. After talking to him, though, that's not what happened at all. Turns out his calculator had run out of batteries right before the test, and so instead of asking the teacher to borrow one or get more batteries, etc., kid just decides to do all the math in the margins of the test. We are talking 5+ calculations of long multiplication and division out to the 100th place for each and every question. That's how he got every question right except off by a little. And when he was done, he went back and erased all the extra work because it wasn't supposed to be part of the test. Did all this and still finished before anybody else. I was amazed. The teacher was amazed. Think he got 100% plus extra credit and they told him next time to just ask for a calculator. It was mind-blowing. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day. I'm a preschool teacher, and I knew a 3-year-old girl that had very extensive vocabulary and could already read really well. Once during lunchtime, a little boy scarfed down his food, and her response was, "Wow, he must have been famished." I was blown away. She also taught me about the digestive system once during lunchtime, and it was accurate information. But her favorite object was the solar system. She was full of facts about the solar system, and she would teach me new things all the time. I always told her that she wasn't ready for kindergarten. She's ready for college. One child, he was more ahead of his peers in every aspect. It seemed like he was babysitting the rest of his classmates. After a week of teaching the class simple coding, he built a fully functional multiplayer game with material he taught himself. This was at age 8. Another child consistently produced excellent work, finished early, and could discuss his viewpoint in depth and actually made me change my viewpoint. He was brilliant in maths. Once, I was explaining a new concept to the class and worked out one example together. I told them that I would guide them in the second example so that I can help whoever needs, and I hear a really genuine and cute, "Oops, I just finished them all now." I'm a special ed teacher, and I teach kids who have emotional and behavioral disabilities like oppositional defiant disorder or autism, which manifests as anger, that kind of stuff. But anyway, last year I had a kid who we think had a photogenic memory and was a possible savant. He could see a map once and be able to draw it nearly perfectly hours or even days and months later. He had almost every detail too, and all the towns and cities spelled correctly and major land features, and even the major highways correctly labeled and named. He also was like a human calculator. You could ask him nearly any math equation and he could answer it in a few seconds in his head. Granted, they couldn't be extreme equations, but pretty much anything like PEMDAS-wise, he could do in his head quickly. His trouble was that he was very aggressive, and we could never put him back in a gen ed classroom because he was such a danger to other kids and teachers if he became annoyed or upset. But he was a good kid and very intelligent. He just had a lot of trouble with his emotions and behavior. I knew when he surprised me by reassembling an engine out of a car all by himself in a single 90-minute class period. It was right before school let out for COVID. I had to hurry up and get some projects thrown back together quickly since school is closing. He has to do it, so I let him try and went off to do other things. By the end of the class, it was completely assembled. Never asked me for help, and it was working. Definitely gifted. Straight A's in school from the start and the ability to hold a pretty adult conversation with me when he was like 7 or 8. I don't really make a thing of it, and neither does he. He doesn't have very much homework to bring home. He does it at school while still in class. He's a freshman this year, and grades are only slipping a bit, all A's except for one B. We've never had him tested, but all his honors teachers assumed he was gifted by his grades and conversational skills. I am a lucky parent. I wouldn't really say he is gifted in any particular area, he just seems damn smart. Before you ask, no, I'm not a gifted parent. I got B's and C's in school, same with his mother. I realize I'm blessed, and I am thankful for that every day. He knows he is smart, but does not exactly brag about it. I came into the room. He was playing a few strings on the guitar. I asked what it was, and he softly pedaled it. I pushed a bit further, and he started playing what he'd written. I was blown away. Of course, it needed a bit of fine-tuning, a guitar solo in the middle, and a few ooh-la-las here and there, but he'd written a legitimate rock song. Blew his parents away when we played it in concert. After less than 1 year of music lessons, it was clear the student would likely become concert pianist when he learned 15 of Bach's 2-part inventions from memory and played them brilliantly. I was teaching distance over time graphs. The student stated that if the line just went straight up, that it would indicate teleportation because distance has been gained but no time has passed. This was 5th grade science. Edit. This kid ended up skipping 6th and 7th grade, 5th to 8th. He was a super humble kid. I miss having him in my class. I knew a kindergarten student, 5 to 6 years old, was gifted by her art. At that age, art is a very loose term, but this girl was drawing detailed drawings. Her people had hair and eyelashes and fingers and fingernails. The amount of detail she put into her art is very advanced for someone of her age. An interesting test for toddlers is to see if they can hold an extended back and forth conversation with adults. Most kids at this age, and most grown-but adults, are just asking for something or telling you something. Not a teacher, but a student with a gifted kid in his class. In 3rd grade, we had a new student come in who had just moved to the country with his family. Our teacher saw he was smart. She challenged him with some math we were meant to learn in a couple weeks. He solved the problems, no problem. She tried some 4th grade level math. Again, he solved it with no problems. After she called in one of the 5th grade teachers, she gave him some problems meant for 5th graders. As expected, he solved those without any problems. They kept going until he got a question partially right. I believe, but that point they were giving him stuff intended for early to mid 6th grade students. Last I heard, this kid got a degree in mathematics from Carnegie Mellon University. Not a traditional teacher, but I taught guitar at a mom-and-pop guitar store in my hometown. A few years ago, a lady brought her 7-year-old daughter in for formal training. Now, 99 out of 100 times, a kid that young wants to play the guitar until they get one. After that, it sits in a corner and collects dust until it makes its way to Goodwill or something. This girl had legitimate talent, though. She managed to teach herself very basic chords on her own and had even began writing music. Everything I taught her, she learned within seconds. Also discovered through comparison with my own ear training that she had perfect pitch. Musicians are peens. Many of us rarely recognize or appreciate true talent in someone else, but this girl was truly something special. If she isn't a famous/successful musician someday, it will be a travesty. Took a summer job helping at a daycare. One of the toddlers, about 18 months old, was way ahead of the rest. Could talk full sentences, knew his ABCs, could count beyond 20, already had shapes and colors down. I've seen kindergarten-age kids that haven't mastered some of these things. He's in his early 20s now with the master's in engineering and a six-figure salary. We took standardized tests like the second week of school. Hadn't really done much academic yet as it was elementary school, grade 5. And most of what we'd done was routines and introduction/games. Kids scored at a 10th grade level in math and 9th grade in reading. Okay? Whatever. Impressive, but not unheard of. Except this kid was at the worst school in the state, literally ranked dead last. His whole schooling career, nobody else in my class scored above a 6th grade level, and anything and most were 3rd to 4th grade level. I basically had to do entirely separate lesson plans for this kid. While the rest of my class did multiplication facts, I had a coding curriculum and was teaching him basic languages. He had his own reading group in addition to the high reading group. It was even more incredible because he'd already been in trouble and in the principal's office the years before. I sent him to ISS once, all year. Really low for that school. Kids on other classes went literally daily. I had a few go once a week. I begged his mom to switch him out of that school track, said I'd fill out any paperwork, write any letters. It was my only year as a teacher, not sure what happened to him. Mom never contacted me. He finished the year by shattering all of his records on testing exams. Literally the 0.01% on his tests. He's legitimately one of the smartest kids I'd ever met, from the poorest school with the worst conditions I've ever seen.